I was sipping my usual morning coffee, feet propped comfortably on the porch railing, watching the sun filter through the oak leaves, when my phone pinged softly on the table beside me. A notification banner slid down from the top of the screen. New device attempted to connect to network Hank_SecureNet. Below it, the device name. Karen iPhone. I froze mid-sip. Not just because of the blatant attempt to access my private network, but because I live alone. My Wi-Fi is locked down tighter than Fort Knox with a complex password I barely remember myself. And the only Karen I knew, the only Karen within probable Wi-Fi range, was my next-door neighbor. Karen Winters, the same Karen who once filed a formal HOA complaint because my ceramic bird feeder was, apparently, excessively decorative and disrupted the neighborhood's visual harmony. Before the implications could fully register, before I could even lower my coffee mug, her voice, sharp and grating as nails on a chalkboard, sliced through the morning quiet from the other side of the pristine white picket fence separating our properties. "Hey, Hank, your signal's coming in really strong over here this morning." I lowered my mug slowly, turning towards the sound. There she was, leaning against the fence with an air of casual entitlement, clutching a large, sweating tumbler of iced coffee like it was a gavel she was about to bang. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, hiding her eyes but not the impatient set of her mouth. "Mind sharing the password?" she chirped, the question delivered with a breezy confidence that suggested refusal was simply not an option. I blinked, genuinely stunned for a moment. The sheer audacity, asking for someone's private Wi-Fi password, especially after just being caught trying to connect without permission, was breathtaking. I managed an awkward chuckle, initially assuming it had to be some bizarrely passive-aggressive joke. A funny Karen. It wasn't a joke. Her expectant silence confirmed that. That was my first mistake, underestimating the boundless depths of Karen Winters' entitlement. Now, to provide context, I live in Willow Creek Estates, a meticulously planned suburban community where the Homeowners Association operates with the fervent zeal of a miniature surveillance state. They believe it's their divine mandate to micromanage every blade of grass, every shade of beige allowed on trim, every aspect of visual conformity. I mostly keep my head down. I pay my dues promptly, mow my lawn to the regulation 2.5 inches, hide my trash cans the nanosecond the truck rounds the corner, and generally try to avoid the swirling vortex of drama that seems to constantly surround the HOA board. Karen Winters, however, isn't just on the board. She is the drama. As president for the past 5 years, a tenure secured mainly because nobody else possessed the peculiar combination of free time, unwavering self-righteousness, and sheer stamina required for the role. She thrives on conflict. She's the type who convenes emergency HOA meetings because someone dared to plant pansies instead of the approved impatiens, or because a decorative garden gnome was deemed thematically inappropriate for the street's designated color palette. Until the bird feeder incident, which was swiftly dismissed by the rest of the board as trivial, I'd miraculously managed to stay mostly off her meticulously maintained radar. Today, it seemed, my luck had run out. She took a noisy slurp from her iced coffee, the straw rattling against the plastic. "I mean seriously," she pressed, shifting her weight with impatience. "It's not like it costs you anything extra for me to hop on. Sharing is caring. Isn't that what they say?" She deployed a laugh that sounded suspiciously like metal scraping pavement. I forced a polite, tight smile, determined to keep things civil, even if my internal monologue was screaming. "Sorry, Karen, I really can't. I work from home, architect," I explained briefly. "Client files, blueprints, sensitive data. I absolutely need my connection to be secure and maintain full bandwidth, especially during work hours." It was the truth, but I knew logic rarely penetrated Karen's force field of self-interest. Her face twisted into a condescending smirk, The kind usually reserved for explaining something very simple to someone perceived as very dense. Oh, honestly, Hank, don't be so ridiculously uptight. It's just Wi-Fi, for heaven's sake. We're neighbors. We live in a community. And community, she declared, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the fence post for emphasis, should always come before individual convenience. That sentence, community should come before convenience, lodged itself in my brain like a piece of particularly sticky gum on a hot sidewalk. Translation, as far as I could tell. My desire to stream TikTok videos by my pool outweighs your need for professional security and reliable internet access. The sheer arrogance of framing her freeloading as a noble act of community spirit was almost impressive. Still clinging to the hope of avoiding protracted conflict, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just having an off morning. Maybe this incredibly awkward, intrusive demand would be the end of it. Sorry, Karen, really can't. I repeated firmly but politely, then turned back towards my house, hoping my body language screamed, conversation over. It wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. Later that evening, while trying to stream a movie, I noticed it subtle but undeniable lag. Buffering icons spinning intermittently. Pages loading a fraction slower than usual. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to prickle my awareness. My connection, usually rock solid thanks to the high-speed fiber optic plan I paid a premium for, felt off. A knot of suspicion tightened in my gut. Just to be sure, I logged into my router's administrative interface, a place few homeowners ever venture. I navigated to the system logs, specifically the security logs detailing connection attempts. My eyes scanned the entries. Then they widened. Dozens upon dozens of failed login attempts, time-stamped throughout the afternoon and early evening, all originating from the same MAC address, all targeting my primary network. And the device identifier broadcast with each failed attempt? Karen iPhone. She hadn't even bothered trying to mask her device name. She was persistent, technologically inept, and utterly shameless. Fury, cold and sharp, replaced my earlier annoyance. This wasn't just nosy entitlement anymore. This was a deliberate, repeated attempt to breach my private network security after being explicitly told no. I immediately changed my Wi-Fi password again, ditching the merely strong one for something truly heinous. A 25-character monstrosity mixing uppercase, lowercase, numbers and obscure symbols that looked like hieroglyphics. I had to write it down and tape it under my desk just to remember it myself. More importantly, I dug deeper into the router settings and enabled push notifications for all failed login attempts and alerts for any new devices, even detected within range attempting negotiation. If she so much as breathed on my network again, my phone would tell me. The very next morning, taped conspicuously to my freshly painted front door, I found a handwritten note. The script was aggressive cursive, slanting sharply across a piece of offensively cheerful floral stationery. It read, "It's just Wi-Fi. Stop being so greedy and selfish. The whole point of an HOA is so we can share resources as a community, not hoard them like some dragon guarding treasure. Think about others for a change." It wasn't signed, of course. Karen operated under a veneer of plausible deniability. But the handwriting, the tone, the specific brand of entitled martyrdom, it screamed Karen louder than her voice carried over the fence. The audacity was escalating. This wasn't just about free internet anymore. This was personal. She felt slighted, denied something she believed was rightfully hers, or at least should be available to her. And she was retaliating with passive-aggressive notes and technological brute force. I crumpled the note and tossed it directly into the recycling bin. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a response. Ignoring her, I reasoned, might starve the fire, make her lose interest, find another neighbor to harass. Wrong again. My passive resistance only seemed to fuel her resolve. 2 days later came the monthly HOA meeting, held in the sterile, beige community clubhouse. I usually skip these tedious affairs, but Tom had tipped me off that Karen had added a vague item to the agenda under New Business, Community Resource Sharing and Digital Etiquette. My gut told me I needed to be there. Sure enough, after slogging through minutes approvals and treasurer reports, Karen took the floor. She didn't look at me directly, instead addressing the room with an air of grave concern. "Esteemed neighbors," she began, her voice dripping with faux sincerity, "I feel compelled to bring up a somewhat delicate issue impacting our community's harmony. It seems some people," she paused, letting the implication hang heavily, "in this very neighborhood believe their personal Wi-Fi signal is more important than, say, our children's education." My jaw tightened. I glanced around the room, baffled. A few residents, likely Karen's loyalists or those easily swayed by appeals to the children, nodded sympathetically. "I have no children. Karen has no children. What did my private internet have to do with anyone's homework?" "How," Karen continued, her voice rising with performative pathos, "are the young students in our community expected to complete their online assignments, their research projects, if they can't even get a reliable connection while playing in their own backyards because certain individuals selfishly refuse to share?" It was masterful manipulation, painting me as the villain, the obstacle to childhood learning, all because I wouldn't give her my password. The HOA president, Mr. Henderson, a weary, balding man who looked like he'd personally aged 10 years during Karen's 5-year reign, rubbed his temples tiredly. He muttered something about the HOA having absolutely no jurisdiction over private internet services or passwords, but his voice lacked conviction. Karen had successfully planted the seed. In the eyes of some, I was now the Willow Creek Wi-Fi miser, the selfish signal hoarder, depriving imaginary children of their education. Her campaign of passive-aggressive character assassination had officially begun. I walked home that night fuming, not just at Karen's audacity, but at her effectiveness. She knew how to play the HOA game, how to twist rules and manipulate perceptions. Direct confrontation felt like stooping to her level, likely resulting in screaming matches over the fence. Ignoring her clearly wasn't working. How could I shut this down definitively, on my own terms, without sacrificing my peace or my principles? Then, halfway across my perfectly manicured lawn, it hit me. An idea so simple, so perfectly suited to the absurdity of the situation, that I almost laughed out loud. I didn't need to confront Karen directly. I could speak her language, the language of passive aggression, public display, and petty signaling. I could send a message she, and everyone else within range, couldn't possibly ignore. A message delivered silently, digitally, every single time she glanced at her phone or laptop searching for a connection. I went straight to my office, logged back into my router's labyrinthine interface, navigated to the network settings, and carefully typed in a new SVD, the broadcast name for my Wi-Fi network. I double-checked the spelling, ensured the network visibility was toggled to on, even though it remained securely password protected, and hit Save Changes. The network formerly known as Hank_SecureNet now proudly announced itself to every nearby device scanning for available connections as not_4_Karen_911. The effect was immediate and immensely satisfying. The very next morning, not long after the sun had cleared the oak trees, a shriek of pure outrage erupted from Karen's patio, loud enough to make the birds scatter. "Are you kidding me? What is this? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Her voice vibrated with impotent fury, echoing across the manicured lawns. I didn't respond. I didn't even look over. I simply continued watering my hydrangeas, a small, private smile playing on my lips. Let her stew. Let the neighborhood see. Moments later, my doorbell rang repeatedly, insistently. like someone was trying to summon a demon rather than politely request entry. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt, and opened the door calmly. There stood Karen, phone thrust forward like accusatory evidence, her face mottled with rage. "This," she sputtered, pointing furiously at her screen, displaying the available Wi-Fi networks. "This is harassment. Targeted harassment. I know you named your Wi-Fi that specifically to target me." I raised a single, innocent eyebrow. "My Wi-Fi name? Why on earth would I do something like that, Karen?" I paused, feigning mild confusion. "Unless," I added, letting my gaze drift towards her phone, "unless you've been repeatedly trying to connect to my private, password-protected network without permission? In which case, I suppose that network name would seem rather applicable to the situation, wouldn't it?" Her jaw literally dropped. A flicker of stunned realization crossed her face before being consumed again by fury. She opened her mouth, closed it again, unable to form a coherent retort that didn't implicitly admit her own wrongdoing. With a strangled noise of pure frustration, she spun on her heel and stomped back across her lawn, radiating waves of impotent anger. Victory? Perhaps a minor skirmish won. But knowing Karen, the war was far from over. That afternoon, tucked loosely inside my regulation height mailbox, I found another strange letter. No envelope, no official HWA letterhead, just a single sheet of cheap printer paper folded in half. Typed in a slightly crooked font, it declared itself a formal notice of violation. It accused me of inappropriate public network naming, creating a hostile digital neighborhood environment, and disrupting community harmony through provocative SED broadcasting. The alleged penalty: immediate network renaming or facing escalating daily fines and potential signal mitigation measures. The sheer absurdity of it was almost comical. Signal mitigation measures? What was she planning to do? Build a Faraday cage around my house? But the amateurishness of the notice was revealing. No official logo, questionable formatting, non-standard language, and crucially, delivered improperly, stuffed in the box, not mailed. I immediately suspected forgery. A quick email to the HWA secretary, attaching a photo of the notice, confirmed my suspicion. "Dear Hank," the reply came swiftly. "Thank you for forwarding this. Please be advised the HWA has issued no such violation notice regarding Wi-Fi names, nor is there any bylaw covering SIDS. This document did not originate from the board. We will look into this matter further." So, Karen had escalated from attempted hacking and passive-aggressive notes to actively forging official HWA documents. This wasn't just annoying neighbor drama anymore. This was potentially criminal. Falsifying official correspondence, attempting to levy fraudulent fines. That crossed a serious line. Part of me wanted to immediately forward my entire dossier of evidence, the router logs, the note, the fake violation, to the board and demand action. Go nuclear. But another, more strategic part, the part that enjoyed this bizarre chess match, decided to hold back. Just for a little longer. Karen thought she was playing checkers, making obvious, clumsy moves. She had no idea I was documenting every step, collecting receipts, building an airtight case. She had no clue I had screenshots of her iPhone attempting dozens of logins. No idea my doorbell camera had recorded our Wi-Fi name confrontation. No idea I now had proof of her forging documents. She thought she was 5 steps ahead, relentlessly pursuing her goal of free Wi-Fi through sheer force of will. She had no earthly conception that I was already 10 steps ahead, patiently waiting for her to make one final, overreaching mistake. The question wasn't if she would push too far, but when. And when she did, what kind of meticulously documented, legally sound response would she least expect? That's where things were about to get really interesting. My patience was wearing thin, but my strategic mind was just getting warmed up. The next few days were a strange mix of tense silence and petty escalations. Karen avoided direct eye contact, but her hostility radiated across the property line like a palpable force field. I'd hoped the not_4_Karen_911 Wi-Fi name, combined with the knowledge that her forged notice had been discovered, might finally convince her to back down. Instead, it seemed to galvanize her into finding new, more creative avenues for harassment. One morning, I stepped outside to find my meticulously edged lawn looking fuzzy. On closer inspection, I realized dozens of dandelions, freshly plucked and clearly transported from elsewhere, had been scattered across my pristine fescue overnight. It was childish, almost pathetic, but undeniably deliberate. I spent an hour pulling them out, shaking my head at the sheer pettiness. The following day, my normally reliable newspaper delivery was missing. I saw the delivery car pass, saw papers land on other driveways, but mine was inexplicably absent. Coincidence? Possible, but highly suspicious given the ongoing Cold War. I signed up for the digital edition. Then came the sprinkler incident. I was working in my home office when I heard an unusual hissing sound. Glancing out the window, I saw one of Karen's lawn sprinklers, positioned right near the property line, angled bizarrely away from her own lawn and directly towards my recently planted rose bushes. A powerful stream of water was pummeling the delicate blooms, soaking the mulch bed into a muddy swamp. This wasn't an accident. The sprinkler head had been manually twisted and locked into that position. She wanted me to know she could still reach across the fence, still inflict annoyance, even without digital means. I calmly walked outside, turned off my own water main temporarily, just in case, documented the misaligned sprinkler with my phone camera, and then, using a long garden tool, carefully reached over the fence and twisted the nozzle back towards her own parched-looking petunias. I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her. I just corrected the problem and recorded the evidence. The silent war of attrition was exhausting, but I refused to engage on her level. Screaming matches and petty retaliation weren't my style. My strategy remained unchanged. Document everything. Wait for her to cross a line she couldn't uncross, and then present the overwhelming evidence to the proper authorities, the H-Way board, and potentially law enforcement if necessary. Karen, however, seemed incapable of subtlety or patience. Her next move was to escalate back to the public forum. She called another emergency H-Way meeting, this time ostensibly about neighborhood digital security and ethical online conduct. The email announcement was laden with thinly veiled references to irresponsible network naming, potential for digital harassment, and the need to protect community children from inappropriate online visibility. The meeting was even more sparsely attended than usual. Most residents clearly recognized this for what it was: another chapter in the ongoing Karen versus Hank saga. Karen stood at the podium, radiating righteous indignation, and launched into a rambling monologue about the dangers of provocative Wi-Fi names being visible to minors. Imagine, she pleaded dramatically, a child searching for a network to do their homework, only to be confronted with hostile and targeted messages. It erodes the very fabric of trust in our community. Mr. Henderson, the long-suffering H-Way president, looked like he might actually fall asleep standing up. He waited for her to pause for breath, then stated flatly, "Karen, as has been established multiple times, the H-Way has zero authority over private Wi-Fi network names. It is not within our purview. This meeting is adjourned." He banged the gavel before she could even formulate a rebuttal. Defeated publicly yet again, Karen resorted to her next tactic: outsourcing. The following afternoon, I noticed a teenager I didn't recognize lingering near the fence line separating our properties. He was holding a tablet, occasionally glancing down at it, then up towards my house. He looked nervous and out of place. He accidentally dropped a frisbee into my yard. When I walked over to retrieve it for him, I saw his tablet screen briefly. It displayed a Wi-Fi scanning app actively searching for networks. Later that evening, my router logs lit up again. Not just failed login attempts this time, but patterns indicative of brute force password guessing attacks and attempts to exploit known router vulnerabilities. The device names were generic: Android P, NetScanner device. But the timing and proximity were undeniable. Karen had recruited or coerced a kid into attempting more sophisticated hacking. This crossed a new line. Attempting to breach my network herself was bad enough. Involving a minor in potentially illegal activity was significantly worse. It was time to set the final trap. I consulted briefly with a friend who works in cybersecurity. Following his advice, I didn't just rely on my existing router security. I set up a dedicated honeypot network. I named it something deliberately tempting: HOA_guest_access_free. I left it seemingly unsecured, an open invitation. However, this network wasn't truly open. It was a sophisticated trap. Anyone connecting would be immediately shunted into an isolated virtual sandbox. Their device wouldn't gain actual internet access, nor could it interact with my primary network. But crucially, the honeypot was configured to meticulously log everything about the connecting device: MAC address, device type, operating system, connection timestamps, duration, and any data packets sent or received during the attempted connection. It would even attempt to capture device identifiers if broadcast. It was the digital equivalent of a high-tech roach motel. I left the honeypot active. I didn't have to wait long. Within hours, the log showed multiple connection attempts and then a successful connection from a device identified as Karen_laptop_new. She had taken the bait. The honeypot dutifully recorded her MAC address, her Windows OS version, and the brief, fruitless data packets exchanged as her machine tried and failed to reach the actual internet. I now had irrefutable, forensic-level proof of her actively attempting to connect to a network clearly labeled for HOA guests, originating from her known device. Combined with the previous logs, the notes, the fake violation, the sprinkler incident photos, and potentially the teenager's testimony, if it came to that, the case against her was overwhelming. But I decided on one final, subtle twist before presenting everything. Using the honeypot's captive portal feature, the screen that sometimes appears when connecting to public Wi-Fi requiring you to agree to terms, I configured a custom message: anyone connecting to HOA_guest_access_free. From that point forward would be redirected not to an agreement page, but to a simple, static web page displaying only the following text: attempting to access networks not belonging to you can have legal consequences, Karen. All connection attempts are logged. Consider this your final warning. Less than 10 minutes after implementing the captive portal, I heard a muffled shriek from Karen's house, followed by the distinct sound of something heavy hitting a wall. She'd connected again, likely to see if the free network was working, and received my personalized legal advisory instead. This time, she didn't stomp over. She didn't yell. There was only silence. A heavy, resentful silence that lasted for the rest of the evening. The next morning, I compiled everything. The initial connection logs from Karen iPhone. The photo of the aggressive handwritten note. The photo of the forged HOA violation. The time-stamped photos of the misaligned sprinkler. The logs of the brute force attacks likely from the teenager's tablet. The comprehensive forensic logs from the honeypot capturing Karen_laptop_new, connecting to the trap network. I even included a screenshot of the custom warning message displayed by the captive portal. I drafted a calm, factual email to the entire HOA board, excluding Karen naturally, attaching the evidence dossier. The subject line was simple: formal complaint and evidence regarding ongoing harassment and network intrusion attempts by K. Winters. I outlined the sequence of events chronologically, referencing the attached evidence for each point. I concluded by stating that while I had hoped the matter could be resolved informally, the escalation, culminating in attempted network intrusion and the potential involvement of a minor, necessitated formal board intervention to ensure the behavior ceased immediately. I CC'd my cousin Jennifer, the attorney, for good measure. The response from the HWA board president, Mr. Henderson, came within an hour. Dear Hank, thank you for this comprehensive documentation. The board was already reviewing previous concerns, but this new evidence is deeply troubling. Please be assured we are taking this matter with the utmost seriousness. An emergency closed-door board session is being convened this evening to discuss appropriate action based on the evidence provided. We will be in touch. That evening, as the HOA board met privately in the clubhouse, I sat on my porch, sipping not coffee, but a well-deserved cold beer. I didn't know exactly what disciplinary action they would take, but I knew Karen's reign of petty tyranny was effectively over. She had wildly overestimated her power and profoundly underestimated my resolve, my technical aptitude, and my meticulous record-keeping. Later that night, Mr. Henderson called me directly. Hank, he sounded exhausted but relieved. The board has reviewed the evidence. It's undeniable. Based on the repeated harassment, the forged document, and the digital intrusion attempts, the board has voted unanimously to remove Karen Winters from her position as president and suspend her HOA privileges indefinitely pending further investigation into potential legal liabilities. A formal notice is being delivered to her tomorrow morning. We sincerely apologize for the distress this situation has caused you. A slow smile spread across my face. Checkmate. The following morning, a moving truck pulled up to Karen's house. Not an eviction. The HOA didn't have that power. But apparently, the humiliation and loss of her presidential power were too much to bear. She wasn't staying where she couldn't rule. By noon, the truck was loaded, and Karen drove away without a backward glance, her oversized sunglasses firmly in place, leaving Willow Creek Estates significantly quieter and finally truly peaceful. Just for fun, before dismantling the honeypot, I logged into my router one last time and changed my primary network name. It now broadcasts proudly to the neighborhood. Peace and quiet _ finally.